First story. My new husband calls my daughter a sociopath. I allowed him and let him punish my daughter when she didn't react happily enough after my pregnancy announcement. But everything he did was out of love. I banned her from going to school or to her father's home as punishment and demanded her to respect my new husband. Now I regret everything. I 34F live with my husband 37M, my daughter Sophia 15F, and my son Nathan 11M. Both Sophia and Nathan are from my first marriage. Their dad and I split about 5 years ago, and there was no drama or hostility during the divorce. We co-parent well, and we let the kids decide where they wanted to live. Right now, they're with me full-time during the week and see their dad on weekends. My husband, I'll call him Dan, and I have been together for 3 years and married for a year and a half. When we got serious, I made sure the kids were comfortable. Nathan was pretty quick to warm up to Dan. He's a pretty outgoing, easygoing kid. Sophia was more reserved. She's always been quiet and kind of emotionally muted, even before Dan was in the picture. Dan noticed that quickly. He comes from a very say-it-like-it-is background and doesn't like when people mope around, as he puts it. He's not the warmest person, but he's consistent. He has rules. He's firm. He treats both kids the same. He expects chores done, homework finished, phones off at dinner, that kind of thing. He doesn't tolerate attitude. He's gotten into arguments with Sophia a few times about her tone or eye-rolling, but nothing I thought was out of line. He teases the kids, sometimes in a rough way. Like with Sophia, he started calling her Sociopath, like Sophia and sociopath combined. The first time he said it, it was after she rolled her eyes at something he said about screen time, and he laughed and said, "God, you're like a little sociopath sometimes." I'll admit I raised my eyebrows at it the first time, but he said it was just a joke and he'd stop if it bothered her. But he kept using it off and on. I assumed it didn't bother her too much because she never really said anything. She'd just go quiet. That's how she is. Anyway, fast forward to last week. Dan and I sat the kids down to tell them I'm pregnant. It wasn't exactly planned, but we're happy and trying to be positive about it. Nathan was absolutely thrilled. He ran over to hug me, asked if he could feel the baby, even though there's nothing to feel yet, and asked if it would be a boy or girl. Just super excited. Sophia, on the other hand, just sat there with a tight smile and said, "I'm happy for you." That was it. Dan let out a big groan and said, "You could at least pretend to be happy. That's what normal people do." The air just went totally still after that. Sophia looked at him for a second, and then walked out of the room without a word. I'll admit it was awkward, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Dan gets frustrated with her sometimes because she's so emotionally flat. He says it's like talking to a brick wall. But I honestly think he means well. I've told him to be gentler with her, but he says he's just trying to push her to be more engaged with life. He does the same with Nathan. He criticizes him for slouching, says things like "suck it up" if he gets upset over something, and calls it tough love. Nathan doesn't love it, but he never talks back or disrespects Dan. He mostly just avoids him when he can. Sophia, on the other hand, withdraws completely or shuts down. There have been a few blow-ups in the past. Once, Dan got mad because Sophia didn't say "thank you" after he picked her up from school. Her dad usually does, but he was stuck at work that day. Dan said something like, "A simple thank you isn't that hard, even for a teenage ice queen," and she snapped back with, "Well, I didn't ask you to come." He grounded her for being rude, and I backed him up. I told her if she wanted respect, she had to show it too. Looking back, maybe that moment stuck with her more than I realized. So this weekend rolls around, and her dad comes to pick her and Nathan up like usual. I noticed Sophia had a bigger bag than normal, like she was packing for more than a couple of days. I asked her to go put some things back, and she straight up refused. She said she was staying longer this time. I told her no, that it wasn't part of the plan, and I physically blocked the door when she tried to walk out with the bag. Her dad was already outside, and I told him she wasn't going anywhere. She just stood there silent, staring at me like I wasn't even her mom. Later that night, her dad called me furious. Sophia had called him crying, begging him not to come back here, saying she felt unsafe and uncomfortable around Dan. She told him that Dan constantly calls her sociopath and criticizes her every move, and that I never defend her. She even told him about the pregnancy announcement incident and how Dan said she wasn't normal. According to her, I just let it happen and acted like everything was fine. I told her dad that Dan doesn't mean any harm, he's just direct and sarcastic, and that it's all in good fun. I said Sophia takes things too personally, and that maybe she's being a little dramatic. He didn't take that well. He said, "So your husband bullies our daughter, and you're calling her dramatic?" Do you even hear yourself? I told Dan everything that happened. He sighed, rubbed his face, and said he'd talk to her. The next day, he went into her room and said, "Look, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, okay? I was joking. Maybe I went too far." Sophia didn't say anything, just stared at him until he got frustrated and walked out. I told her that it was rude to ignore an apology, and that not everyone gets an apology like that from Dan, so she should appreciate the effort. She didn't say anything to me either. Then Sunday night, her dad dropped Nathan off, and he asked Sophia if she was going to live with their dad from now on. He looked genuinely sad. The two of them are super close. He always says she's his best friend. I realized if she leaves, he might ask to go too, and I can't lose both of them. I told myself it was just a phase. Teenagers overreact all the time, especially when there's a new baby on the way. Then Monday morning, she was packing clothes into her backpack. Not school stuff, full outfits, toiletries, chargers. I asked what she was doing, and she said, completely straight-faced, "Dad's picking me up after school. I'm staying with him this week since you wouldn't let me go this weekend." I told her absolutely not, that she was staying here, and Dan backed me up immediately. He said, "You don't get to run away every time someone tells you something you don't like." She didn't argue and just kept packing like we weren't standing right there. I told her she wasn't going to school that day because I wasn't letting her run off the second she got the chance. She froze for a second, then pulled out her phone and called her dad right in front of us. Told him, "They're not letting me leave." Her dad started blowing up my phone right after. He said this was exactly what he was worried about, that I was locking her up like a prisoner, that I was violating our agreement, and that if she wanted to live with him, I had to let her. He told me he'd go to court if he had to. I told him this entire thing was getting blown out of proportion. I said it's not abuse when a stepparent disciplines a teenager who constantly shuts down and refuses to communicate. I said Dan treats both kids the same. It's not like he only focuses on Sophia. He expects respect from both of them. If anything, Nathan gets more comments because he's more expressive. Nathan just handles it better. He doesn't take everything as a personal attack. Her dad fired back, saying, "Nathan is afraid of your husband. There's a difference." I honestly don't see that. Nathan keeps his distance from Dan, sure, but he's never said he feels unsafe. He still does his chores and still eats dinner with us. If he were scared, wouldn't he say so? Kids aren't subtle. But now he's upset because he heard Sophia crying in the bathroom on speaker when she called him. Apparently, she told him specific things that I didn't know bothered her, like how Dan sometimes snaps his fingers at her to get her attention and says, "Focus," like she's some unruly dog. Or how he told her once that if she acted like a human being instead of a statue, maybe they'd get along better. I honestly never thought those comments stuck with her. It's just how Dan talks, blunt, sarcastic, dry humor. I told her dad that. But he said calling your stepdaughter a sociopath repeatedly isn't humor. He also brought up an argument from months ago where Dan yelled because she didn't clean the kitchen properly. She told him she had finals that week and didn't have time to deep clean, and he said, "Excuses don't get chores done," and made her redo it at 9 p.m. I didn't think that was unreasonable. Kids need structure. Sophia shuts down when pressured, but that's not Dan's fault. He's trying to prepare her for adulthood. But now every little incident is being reframed as abuse. As if normal discipline is suddenly traumatic. As if teenage attitude isn't a real issue parents have to deal with. Sophia isn't a fragile child. She's almost an adult. If she can't handle being told to communicate or show basic courtesy, how is she going to handle the real world? The biggest issue, in my opinion, is the pregnancy. She hasn't said it outright, but I think she's scared of not being the center of attention anymore. She's always been more reserved, but since we told them about the baby, she's gotten even more distant. I think she's latching on to this idea that Dan is some kind of arsehole because it gives her an excuse to pull away. Nathan keeps asking me if he's supposed to choose a house if Sophia moves. I told him he doesn't need to worry about that his sister is overreacting and things will calm down. He said, "She doesn't like when Dan talks to her. She says he talks like she's stupid." I asked if he feels that way, and he shrugged and said, "He gets mad a lot, but I don't argue." That's not fear, that's just a kid knowing not to push back. I tried talking to Sophia privately too. I told her nobody is trying to hurt her, that she's taking jokes too seriously, and that being quiet doesn't mean people are attacking her. I said moving out over a misunderstanding wasn't reasonable. She just sat there looking at me with this expression I can't describe. She said, "You don't listen," and that was the end of the conversation. Wouldn't talk anymore. Her dad is still calling nonstop. demanding I let her go live with him permanently. He says forcing her to stay is harming her mental health. But she's my daughter too. I don't want to lose her because she's misunderstanding sarcasm and discipline. I don't want her to run away every time someone holds her accountable. And I don't want Nathan thinking he can pack his bag next time something doesn't go the way he likes. And now, with the new baby coming, I don't want this household split apart before we even get a chance to adjust. I honestly feel like the adults here need to stop feeding into her dramatics. Kids can't call the shots just because they don't like rules. If I let her move out over this, what does that say about my parenting? That I don't even try. That I let a 15-year-old dictate custody. But everyone her dad, even a couple friends I talk to, is acting like I'm some monster ignoring abuse. It feels like nobody is acknowledging that teenagers exaggerate, and that step-parents aren't perfect. But they're allowed to have expectations. So here's the question. Ada for not letting my daughter go live with her dad, even though she's crying and saying she can't stand my husband anymore. Comments. Comment 1. YTA. Your husband is emotionally abusive. Full stop. Sociopath? Are you kidding me with that SHT? That's not sarcasm. It's a nickname designed to strip her humanity and label her as broken. You say she's emotionally distant, but look at how she's treated. Of course, she's shut down. That's survival mode. And you're standing there watching it all happen and calling it discipline because you're terrified of confronting your husband. He's not tough on both kids equally. He's mean to your daughter and just dismissive of your son. Your daughter cries in bathrooms and calls her dad to escape. That is not a misunderstanding. I don't care how calm she is about it. Not all abuse involves screaming and bruises. Sometimes it's the steady chipping away at someone's spirit, and you've handed him the knife. Comment 2. YTA for letting your husband call your daughter Sociopath. That's not a cute nickname or a term of endearment. It's meant as an insult because she doesn't display emotion on cue for him. Oh man, that hit me in the heart. How dare he? That's not funny. Hey OP, some people just don't feel comfortable showing much emotion, and your daughter sounds like one of them. That's not abnormal. But what is abnormal is having an adult man, a stepfather no less, single her out for mockery over her temperament, and for you to just sit back and normalize it. No wonder she's emotionally withdrawn. You've taught her this home isn't safe to feel anything in. You're focusing on her, not reacting to your pregnancy like it's some personal betrayal. She probably didn't feel safe reacting in any way, because your husband's already made her a target for not being chipper enough. She gave you what she could, a smile, and I'm happy for you, and still got mocked. That's so damaging. You and your daughter, no stepfather, should do therapy to work through these issues. And let me warn you now, you'll have to listen with an open heart and ears, without accusation. And you aren't going to like what you hear. You'll want to argue that she's wrong. You'll want to defend your husband. You can't. You have to give her the floor and listen and believe her and change, or you're going to lose her. And for the love of everything, stop calling this a misunderstanding. That's just your way of avoiding accountability. Comment 3. I understand that you're hurting, but you have extremely downplayed the name calling by your husband. Sociopath. Really? Talk about emotionally damaging. That nickname alone is enough reason for anyone to want to get away from you and your husband. I'm honestly appalled you let that fly once, let alone repeatedly. How long has he been calling her that? Long enough that she doesn't even bother telling you it hurts anymore. That's textbook emotional neglect. You may not be the one saying it, but you're backing him up every time you look away and call it just a joke. And I can't believe he pulled that stunt during your pregnancy announcement. She smiled and said she was happy for you, and your grown-arse husband publicly shamed her for not being more performative. You're not giving birth to the next Messiah here. No one is required to perform joy for you on demand. She was respectful, and you still made her feel defective. Your daughter is clearly isolated in your home. She clearly doesn't trust you with her feelings. You've shown her you'll side with your husband no matter what. So it's no wonder you were shocked when she tried to leave. You're not seeing anything she's been trying to tell you silently for years. Let her go to her dad's. And if your son follows, that's part of the consequence of allowing your husband to bully your child. Not tease, bully. You can call it sarcasm or tough love all day, but if it's crushing her self-esteem and making her cry in secret phone calls, it's abuse. Your husband should be ashamed for coming up with such an awful nickname. He sounds pathetic. He's a grown man, FFS, not a second grader. I'm sorry that you're about to lose your children. But if you don't want to cause permanent damage, let her go and work on a better effing apology from the both of you. Stat. Update. I read through the comments and got hit from every direction. Most of it telling me I was ignoring abuse and choosing my husband over my daughter. That wasn't easy to hear. Still isn't. But I want to explain what's been happening and how out of control everything has become in just a matter of days. After I stopped Sophia from going to her dad's last week, she basically shut down. She's not speaking to me or Dan. Not ignoring. I mean literal silence. She gets up, gets dressed, eats, and moves through the house like she's a guest in a stranger's place. No small talk. No asking for anything. When she walks past us, it feels like someone died in the house. There's no joy. No sound. Just tension. Nathan's noticing it too. He asked me, "Did something happen to Sophia's voice?" I told him she's just not in a good mood. He said she hasn't laughed in a week. That crushed me. Dan thought we needed to reset the house and re-establish rules. Show her that we're not going to tiptoe around this behavior. He grounded her. Took her phone for 3 days, limited her screen time, and no going out. I told him maybe that wasn't the best idea, but he was already spiraling from feeling like he was being vilified. He said, "She's not going to keep holding the house hostage with silence. I'm going to be a father, and I won't let this environment poison that." Which brings me to Nathan again. He's pulling away from Dan too, in his own way. He's not disrespectful, but he's avoiding Dan, slipping off to his room the second Dan enters, and keeping his earbuds in. He used to play video games with Dan occasionally. Now he won't even sit in the same room. I asked him if he wanted to talk, and he said, "Sophia doesn't like him, and now I kinda get why." He didn't elaborate, but it's clear. The kids are grouping up, and I feel completely stuck in the middle. Things came to a head a few days ago, when Dan tried to make amends by taking Sophia out for ice cream. He didn't tell me about it beforehand. He just told me later that they needed one-on-one time. When she got back, she went straight to her room, locked the door, and refused to come out for dinner. That night, her dad called me. He was livid. Sophia said she recorded the entire conversation and played it for him. Dan had apparently told her, "You're lucky I put up with this. Most stepdads would have walked by now, and you could have made this easier if you just acted like you cared." That's how Dan thinks reconciliation works, by pointing out how hard he's trying. As if that wasn't enough, I got a call from Sophia's school. Her guidance counselor wanted to schedule a meeting because Sophia came to her crying, saying she doesn't feel emotionally safe at home. She didn't accuse us of anything illegal, but mentioned the name calling and the silent treatment, and said she's being punished for wanting to live with her dad. The counselor said she was obligated to file a report. So now we're under review by CPS. And yes, I know everyone's obsessed with the Sociopath nickname. I want to say something about that. It was never used with hate. Dan thought he was being funny, not cruel. The name was only said a handful of times, and mostly in moments where he felt she was being emotionally flat or dismissive. I get it now, it wasn't okay. But why is that the only thing people want to talk about? Why are we willing to erase everything else a person does and reduce them to one bad nickname? Dan has been doing his best to make things right. But the moment people hear that word, it's like nothing else matters. What really hurts is how fast people, my own family included, turned on me. My sister came over and confronted me, which I did not expect. She asked if I remembered how we used to cry when our stepdad would snap at us or ignore us. Then she said, "If our stepdad had treated me the way Dan treats Sophia, Mum would have burned his house down. What happened to you?" That hit me harder than anything the internet said. She told me she'd take Sophia in herself if I didn't get my act together. Said she's not going to watch her niece fall apart while I play house with a new baby and a man who has no business being around teenagers. And now, with all this swirling, I had a pregnancy scare. Light bleeding, cramps, ended up in the ER. Thankfully everything's fine, but I'm on modified bed rest now. I have to limit stress, rest more, and take care of myself. But how? The house is broken. My daughter won't speak. My son is retreating. My husband is defensive. My ex-husband is threatening court and has already filed a petition for emergency custody of both kids. I have a baby on the way, and I'm drowning. No one is listening to me. Everyone is laser focused on getting my kids out of this house. But no one seems to care what that does to me, to this family. I'm pregnant, for God's sake. Why is the first solution to rip the father away from his unborn child and treat him like he's some abusive criminal when he's doing everything he can to fix this? When did trying stop being enough? I want my baby to be born into a full family. But with the way things are going, I don't know if Dan will even be here. I don't know if I'll still have my older kids in this house. I don't even know how we got here. People keep saying I need to listen, but when I try to talk, no one hears me. The people who should be standing with me, my kids, my sister, my ex, they're all fighting me. Even here, all I got were comments about how awful I am, how I'm just letting abuse happen. Did anyone even try to see how overwhelmed I am? I'm one person trying to keep a family from falling apart, and I'm losing everything all at once. Comments. Comment 1. Girl, I don't know how to say this gently, but you're imploding your family and blaming everyone else for lighting the match. You're mad your daughter doesn't want to live in a house where she gets emotionally sucker punched, and your response is to ground her, take her phone, and lock her in silence with a man who made her feel small enough to shut down completely. And now she's mute. CPS is involved. Your son is backing away, and your husband is doubling down on his rules while you're on bed rest. And you still think the biggest issue here is that people are fixated on a joke. No, that joke is a symbol. It's the clearest example of your husband dehumanizing a child and you standing by. Your daughter is bleeding internally, and everyone around her saw it except you. Now the hemorrhage is public. You're upset people didn't notice you bleeding too. But here's the difference. You had power. She didn't. You want your baby to be born into a full family. Then protect the kids you already have like they matter as much as the one you're carrying. Because right now, you're treating your unborn child like it deserves a loving home and acting like Sophia should settle for less. Comment 2. I've worked adjacent to family court. You are wildly underestimating how badly this could go for you if you keep minimizing. CPS involvement plus a 15-year-old requesting a change in custody plus a father with a clean record and established visitation history equals sign. You are on very thin ice legally. If this goes to court and your daughter testifies that your husband mocked her mental state, your son says he's scared, and there's a school counselor backing it up, you're not just risking custody, you're risking your credibility as a parent. Stop making this about people trying to take your baby's father away. This is about your husband creating an unsafe, emotional environment for minors. That baby is not here yet. Sophia and Nathan are. You're blaming everyone else for not understanding. But from a legal standpoint, they're doing exactly what they should, advocating for the children in distress. You should be doing that too, before a judge does it for you. Comment 3. You sound like someone who's afraid to admit they picked the wrong man, so you're sacrificing your daughter on the altar of your mistake. Your sister called it your own mother would have gone scorched earth. But instead of standing up, you're letting Dan stomp around like he owns your daughter's soul. Then you double down and punish her for reacting like a person who's been humiliated in her own home. And this whole, I'm pregnant, why won't anyone care about me thing, I get that you're stressed. But you're not the only person in pain. Your daughter is bleeding emotionally while you're clutching your belly and demanding silence so your peace isn't disturbed. She's not fighting you, she's escaping you. Let her go. Let her live somewhere she doesn't have to keep herself small. Then do the work. Get therapy. Figure out why you're trying so hard to prove your husband is a good man, instead of just accepting that maybe he's not the right man for this family. Update. Things didn't calm down after the last update. If anything, everything tightened around me until I felt like the walls in my own house were shrinking. After the CPS visit and the school counselor calling, I still refused to let Sophia stay at her dad's. I believed and honestly still believe that pulling her out during this tension would make everything permanent. So I held my ground. I told her she needed stability, not escape. She didn't argue. She just went silent again. Meanwhile, Dan's job found out about the CPS report. Someone Dan swears it was my ex sent an anonymous notice to his HR department, out of concern for minors in the home. Dan works in a public-facing office, not with children, but it was enough to trigger an internal review. His supervisor asked him to temporarily step away from client contact until the review closed. He came home looking smaller than I've ever seen him. I tried comforting him, but he was shaking and kept saying, I'm being painted as an uncaring parent. Over jokes. Over misunderstandings. He spiraled every night, pacing the living room, checking emails, and snapping at shadows. He wasn't angry at the kids, he was terrified. And I hated that no one cared about what this was doing to him. The school emailed again, this time from Sophia's math teacher. She said Sophia's grades dropped so sharply that she was concerned about severe emotional disturbance or burnout. Another suggestion for counseling. Another adult implying we're the problem. I told them she was dealing with family stress, and the teacher said, yes, she told me. The next weekend, Nathan lied to me for the first time. He told me he was going to a friend's birthday sleepover, but I found out through the friend's mom that no such party existed. He was at his dad's. When I confronted him, he said, I don't want to be here. It feels bad all the time. He wouldn't elaborate. And then my sister got involved again. She's always been blunt, but this time she wasn't even pretending to be diplomatic. She said Sophia had been texting her, and she had invited Sophia to stay over whenever she needs space. She said she couldn't sit by while a 15-year-old is emotionally drowning. I told her she was undermining me, and she said, "Maybe you shouldn't make it so easy." The worst moment was the drop-off incident. Dan went outside when my ex arrived with Nathan. I didn't hear the conversation, but it escalated fast. Voices raised. Nathan got out of the car and immediately grabbed his dad's hand. My ex yelled, "Stay away from my kids, both of them." Dan shouted back that he wasn't abusive, that he was tired of being painted like a threat when all he's done is try. My ex told him he had no business disciplining a child who clearly hates him. Sophia sat in the front seat staring straight ahead. Didn't even react when Nathan hugged her goodbye. She wouldn't look at me either. 2 days later, I got an email from a law office. My ex had officially filed for custody modification, full custody of Sophia, shared custody of Nathan, and supervised visitation for Dan. The lawyer's letter explained that Sophia was requesting to testify privately and that the school had documentation supporting emotional distress. I hired my own lawyer. We spent hours going through everything. He told me that 15-year-olds have enormous sway in custody cases, especially when there are documented emotional issues, especially when the other parent has no record and a stable home, especially when the child is consistent and credible. My lawyer said the CPS findings were inconclusive but concerning. That phrase stuck in my head like a bruise. The legal battle dragged on for 6 weeks. I was exhausted, pregnant, and constantly defending myself. Dan was worse, spiraling or withdrawn, barely sleeping, barely eating, terrified that any misinterpreted joke could destroy everything. He even started therapy to cope. After the first session, he said, "The therapist told me I need to learn empathy. As if I've been kicking your daughter around." He cried that night, quiet, embarrassed, and turned away so I wouldn't see. Eventually, we lost. Not completely. Nathan stays with us on the same shared schedule as before, but Sophia was granted primary residence with her father. The judge said her testimony showed a clear and consistent desire to relocate and significant emotional distress in the current environment. When the ruling came down, Sophia didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She looked tired. She hugged Nathan, hugged my sister, and walked out without looking back. She didn't hug me. Not even a polite one. That was the moment I felt something crack inside me. I had the baby 2 weeks later. It should have been joyful. Dan cried when he held her. Nathan tried to smile for the pictures but looked hollow. And I just felt emptiness. Not about the baby, she's perfect. But the entire room felt wrong. Everyone kept saying, "Congratulations," and all I could think was, my family is scattered and broken. And this moment is soaked in sadness. Dan is trying. He's in therapy. He's calmer and more aware of how people see him. But he also keeps saying things like, "How can I be a good father to one child if the world has decided I'm dangerous to the others?" Nathan is quieter. He goes to his dad's and comes back looking like he left pieces of himself there. He holds the baby gently, but I see how lost he is. Like he's trying to understand what family means now. As for Sophia, she barely texts. When she does, it's short, polite, cold. She didn't even want to hold the baby when they met. Nathan kept asking her, "Don't you think she's cute?" And she'd just nod. And I hate myself for this, but something in me resents her. Resents that she couldn't just try. Resents that she couldn't see how hard I was fighting to keep this family together. Resents that she chose distance over effort. That she chose her father's house, her silence, and her anger over giving Dan a real chance to be part of her life. Over welcoming a new sibling with even the smallest bit of warmth. Why is she so dark inside when she has so much love around her? Why couldn't she stay and grow with us instead of tearing everything apart? I don't have answers. All I know is that I have a newborn, a wounded marriage, a son fading at the edges, and a daughter who chose a different home. And I don't know if any of this can be fixed. Comments. Comment 1. I'm a stepmom, so I'm going to tell you this straight. Your husband was in way over his head, and you let him drown your daughter. Step-parenting teens takes humility. You can't demand respect and obedience from a kid who never invited you in. You earn that SHT. Slowly. Gently. Dan went the "I'm the man of this house" route, and when it failed, he doubled down. And you backed him up, because you didn't want to admit that love for you doesn't equal love for your kids. Now your marriage is hollowing out and your kids are slipping away. Nathan's lying. Sophia left. And you're still censoring your own heartbreak like you're the real victim here. Here's the truth. You are hurting. But so are your kids. And they didn't get a choice in any of this. They were born. You rebuilt. And you expected them to adjust to a new family, like it was a new coat. They just had to get used to. You failed Sophia by protecting your husband from the consequences of his behavior, instead of protecting her from the behavior itself. Now you've got a baby, a man in therapy, and a son already halfway gone. What you do next decides if you lose them both. Comment 2. You said, "Why is she so dark inside?" Read that back out loud and imagine your daughter seeing that in writing. Imagine being 15, forced to live in a house where you're mocked for your personality, ignored when you express pain, and then later described by your own mother as dark inside. The way you speak about Sophia is chilling. There's something deeply sad about your need to pathologize her silence, like it's a defect rather than a response to years of not being heard. You didn't lose your daughter. You pushed her out the second you decided your new marriage and baby mattered more than the emotional reality she was living in. And now you hate her for surviving it. If your husband had been hitting her, people would call it abuse. But since it was verbal, sarcastic, and discipline, you gaslighted her and everyone else, and now you're furious that it didn't work. The only thing dark here is the fact that you still haven't asked, "What did I miss?" You still only ask, "Why didn't she love this family?" That question is why you lost her. Comment 3. You think Sophia didn't try. I think she tried more than anyone in that house. She smiled when you told her you were pregnant. She sat through dinners. She stayed silent when your husband insulted her to her face. You grounded her, withheld her phone, and kept her from school. And she still tried to live under your roof without exploding. And when she finally left, she didn't burn it all down. She just left. And you hate her for that. She didn't fight for your husband's approval because he made it clear she could never win. She didn't fight for your love because you kept making her pain about your discomfort. That's not a girl who's dark inside. That's a girl who's exhausted. What's scary isn't her reaction. It's how much you still don't understand it. Second story. I renovated my office with my team's Xmas bonus to accommodate my entitled disabled employee at her request. It's been 2 weeks, and she left the job without any notice. They've decided to move back down to Cornwall with family. Another staff member who she is friendly with said she'd been planning to leave since August. This means that this staff member knew they weren't going to be around to use these adjustments. I spent a load of money renovating an old elevator, lowering countertops in the break room to make them accessible, and getting a special desk area to help them with their disability. These are all things which they requested, along with a doctor's note explaining their disability, and a copy of their PIP decision, which showed they were awarded standard daily living and why. Editor's note. Personal independence payment. A UK welfare benefit to help with extra living costs for people with physical mental health conditions or disabilities. We met several times through August and September to discuss their needs and whether there were any compromises I could make to reduce costs. She stated there wasn't. Never once did she mention that she was leaving in November. Work finished on the 10th of November. She resigned on Friday, the 21st, without any notice. I don't want to sound spiteful, but is there any way I can reclaim any of these costs? The disabled bathroom had to be widened and have special rails fitted to accommodate them. Additionally, a special desk was purchased for them, and break room counters were lowered. None of these things actually benefit any of my other staff who aren't disabled. The whole budget that would have gone on Christmas bonuses has been completely blown on someone who wasn't even intending to stay with us. I do have emails from this staff member to her friend, where she discusses moving back with her family in Cornwall and her plans. It's crystal clear that she was intending to leave in November. I've got that in writing. It's worth noting that one reason behind these high costs was that I had to pay a premium to get the work done quickly. While this was happening, I permitted this staff member to work from home as and when they needed to in line with their disabilities. I never required them to come into the office until the accommodation work was done. Comments. Commenter 1. So was this a job that could be done from home? OP, not fully. We operate a 3/2 model. She was fully remote, given her disability, with staff in the office picking up things she couldn't do remotely. Commenter 2. It doesn't seem like a crime has been committed here, not even a civil one. They haven't misrepresented anything, nor entered into a contract that would require they pay for it. You seem to have done everything in line with the EC Act 2010. Editor's note. The UK Act, the Equality Act 2010, legally protects people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. You could write this off as renovations and put in your job advertisements. Disability-friendly office, lift, disabled toilet, etc., etc., etc. And if you sell the building, if it is yours to sell later down the line, you could advertise that as part of the sale. OP true. Most likely the avenue I'll go down. I'm just furious and upset right now. The whole team and I all bent over backwards for her. She used it once when I told her the renovations were complete, and she needed to start working 3/2 hybrid with her colleagues. Then she just left. She really put me and her colleagues under immense pressure to accommodate her. Her teammates had to do things that needed to be done in the office. They drove stuff out to her house when she asked for it. We're all just disgusted by her behavior. Commenter 3. Emphasis is on reasonable adjustments. If OP didn't think they were reasonable, it should have been said when they were requested. As the employee has been working from home for several months as needed, that could have been made a long-term reasonable adjustment versus the costly adjustments in office. I assume OP has a reason for this, but I can't think what it would be if WFHPRN has been managed successfully for so long. OP. Her colleagues have been doing the parts of her job that need to be done in the office. The agreement was always that she'd be back on a 3/2 hybrid when renovations were complete. OP explains more about the emails between the staff member and her friend about moving, the adjustments at the office, and Christmas bonuses. OP emails were sent on our office Outlook system. Supplied by a staff member she was friends with, who is now furious at her because the Xmas bonus has been spent on this. I usually give all my staff £1,000 to £2,000 extra at Christmas, depending on how well we do. This nonsense has left us with no spare cash to do anything more than maybe £50 each. I'm furious and embarrassed about this. 15 staff members are going without a £1,000 Christmas bonus because she lied that she needed these accommodations made, when I have email receipts proving she was never going to be using them. In September, she sent an email to her friend confirming she was going to Cornwall in November. Despite this, she kept pushing for adjustments to be made during this time and stated she could not come into the office until they were complete. She never mentioned to me once that she was going to be leaving. Commenter 4. Why didn't you just let them permanently work remotely? You did this to yourself by requiring them to report to the office. OP. Because her colleagues were having to do the aspects of her job on our site that she wasn't coming in for. She also used to work in office full-time pre-COVID. She was the one employee who refused to move to hybrid with the others. Commenter 5. Just to be a little different here, I just want to say, what a effer. Lots of time, money, and effort for what feels right now like nothing. Lots of good advice here, but I just wanted to validate your feelings of frustration and bewilderment. Let's hope they don't ask for a reference. This definitely feels unfair. Hopefully a lot of the work can be tax deductible, maybe. OP. Yeah, it's all a business expense. I'd still rather have given that money to my staff, though. I feel like complete SHT, not giving an Xmas bonus this year. That's why I'm up at 2am, looking to see what I can do. I can probably manage £200 each from my personal savings. Add on some extra by taking her off payroll. Maybe make £500 if I'm lucky. Commenter 6. You are out of luck then. Sounds like the job can be done just as easily from home, and your arbitrary demand to make someone work from an office instead is a £17,000 mistake on your part. It's tough to feel sorry for you, because all of this could have been avoided if you simply acted reasonably to begin with. OP. There are aspects which can only be done in person. I don't want to risk identifying my business, but it can only be done partially remote. Even during lockdown, we needed 3-4 staff rotating into the site. Update. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to follow up now that a little bit of time has passed and I have a clearer head. I've consulted with a solicitor who advised there was a strong case for pursuing this employee for costs. However, it would be disadvantageous for PR reasons. In light of that, I've decided not to pursue them for costs at present. I wasn't particularly clear in my previous post, but the office I was in already had a functional elevator, a disabled bathroom, etc. My employee's disability, size, and weight meant that they were unable to use the existing elevator and bathroom, which is why she specifically demanded that they be changed. I've also seen a lot of comments and got a lot of messages asking why my employee couldn't just keep working from home given that they'd been working remotely since 2019. Not sure where this came from. It isn't true. Our whole staff, including the employee with a disability, was 100% in the office before COVID. She was working in our office in person for years before COVID without reporting any accessibility issues. After COVID in March 2020, we all went remote apart from 3-4 staff who rotated to do the in-office duties. This didn't work well, and we adopted a hybrid policy for all staff. The employee with a disability was the sole one who refused to return to the office when hybrid working was reintroduced. There were a lot of comments saying I should have sought funding from DWP. We tried that avenue at the time through this government scheme. There was no funding for the type of adjustments that she was requesting be made. Other people asked why I did nothing for 5 years and then rushed this through. This also isn't true. During those 5 years, I made a concerted and continuous effort to bring staff back into the office in a hybrid pattern. This staff member was not the only one who required adjustments, and I have a fairly large team. During this time, I engaged with this employee who had a disability and worked with them applying and inquiring with the DWP's Access to Work program, etc. Speaking with the solicitor and showing him what we had before, he said it was clear my office already met the requirements under the Equality Act 2010, with the exception of the lowered counters in the break room, which were installed, the improved elevator, and the wider disabled bathrooms, which we now have go beyond the requirements of the Act. On the subject of the Christmas bonus, through a combination of no longer having to pay for the employee who left and selling some of my personal stock shares, I've been able to partially fund this year's Christmas bonus. Comments. Commenter 1. Can you please explain how you were going to pay the staff bonuses before this staff member quit? Or was your plan all along to blame this staff member for the lack of bonus this year, even if she had stayed? That's something that wasn't clear from your last post, and it could impact any potential litigation. OP staff are a lot more accepting of not getting a bonus if it means that a colleague with a disability is getting the support that they need. Staff are not accepting of a colleague making demands, pushing her work onto them, refusing to come back in when everyone else did with hybrid, and then disappearing when the company has spent $17,000 making adjustments specifically for her. Commenter 2. I'm not surprised you found a solicitor who was willing to take your money, but it's surprising your HR employee didn't tell you that you were wrong before your consultation. Commenter 3. Whichever solicitor told you that was taking you for a ride. You say the work cost more because you had to do it fast, but it seems like the deadline was something imposed on your end, not anybody else's. Surely they could have kept WFH whilst the renovations were carried out. The stuff about previously not needing adjustments 6 years ago is irrelevant. People's circumstances and health change over time. Presumably her GP and the PIP assessor knew more about her health situation than you do. Commenter 4. As someone who specialized in Equality Act-related reasonable adjustments for disabled employees, I'm still extremely doubtful that you have a case and doubtful that the adjustments you made go beyond reasonable, in part because you actually made them. If they were truly unreasonable, you wouldn't have been able to put them in place. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.